Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, one of the great epics of English literature. Medieval, actually. This is poetry. This is the Reeve's Tale. We just finished the Miller's Tale. And this is the Reeve's Tale, translated by Theodore Morrison. Ready? The prologue to the Reeve's Tale. Now remember, this is after the Miller's Tale, which talked about a carpenter, which is what a reeve is. Okay? When people had laughed about this frivolous case of Absalom and handy nickel knives, different ones had different things to say, but mostly laughed, accepting it as play. And as the story, I saw no man grieve, unless it were but one, Oswald the Reeve. Since carpentry had been his craft by training, he found some anger in his heart for mania, and he grumbled and was somewhat piqued with it. My life, he said, I can pay you every bit. With a proud miller and the bait he nibbled, I took any pleasure in being ribald. What's ribald? It's a pure definition. It has to do with sexual matters. And if you remember the Miller's Tale, that's what that was about. Isn't it a body tale? In any case, the Oswald continues. But I am old. Age blunts my taste for fun. I live on fodder now. Grass time is done. The white top that I have spells my long cares. My heart, too, fails as cleanly as my hairs. We're meddlers, open arses, that's our curse. We old men, as that fruit keeps getting worse. So finally it rots in hay or mold. Even so, it is with us as we grow old. Wow, that's a testimony to old age. Huh? Until we are rotten, we are never ripe. We still keep dancing while the world will pipe. We find our will sticks ever on this nail. We have a white head match with a green tail, just as a leek has, though our powers grow tame. Our will yearns after folly, just the same. We talk, but when we have lost the power to do so in our old ashes, the raked fire shows through. We have, as I point out, 4 coals, no less. Boasting, lying, anger, covetousness. Along with age, these 4 sparks, they always go. For while our limbs may stiffen and turn slow, desire will never fade. And that's the truth. And I myself, as always, a cold steel. What's cold steel? It refers to a youthful desire like lust and desire, right? For I myself have always a close tooth. For all the years that now are past and done, since first my tap of life began to run. For at my very birth, beyond a doubt, death drew the tap of life and let it out. And ever since that tap has run away, till almost empty is the keg today. It's kind of sad, isn't it? The stream of life falls to the bottom rim. Well may the happy tongue lift up the hymn. To grieves outlived that long ago it bore. With old folk there is dotage and no more. Our Lord the host, as soon as he had heard the Reeve's discourse, put in his kingly word. He said, the host says, what does it come to, all this wit? Why should we talk all day of holy writ? The devil taught a Reeve to preach, no fail, or a cobbler how to a doctor or to sail. Don't waste our time. Tell us what you have to say. It's 7:30. Here's Deptford in our way. Greenwich is yonder, with many a scoundrel in it. So if you've got a tale, it's high time to begin it. Now, sirs, I beg you, said Oswald the Reeve, that none of you will be upset or grieve if I should take him down from his high horse. Wonder who him is, huh? It's always proper to answer force with force. And this drunken miller here has told us all about a carpenter who took a fall, perhaps in scorn, since I myself am one. With leave, I'm going to pay him back before I'm done. I will speak his low talk, just as he has spoken, and I pray to God he gets his neck well broken. In my eye, he can see what mote there is, but what he can't see is the beam in his. So he's going to pay back the miller for talking about the carpenter and his family. Ready? That was a prologue. Now, you may ask, why does Chaucer use prologues? Why does he tell prologues? Well, he's setting up the story, right? You just heard the Reeve, right, over here, talking about he's an old guy, right? And now he's going to tell us tale. Before we go on, a Sheffield blade refers to a utility knife blade, a standard mini blade manufactured by Sheffield, a company well known for its knives and cutlery, even today. The Reeve's Tale. At Trumpington near Cambridge, a brook flows. Across this brook, moreover, a bridge goes. And on this said brook stands a mill as well, and sober truth is all of this that I tell. A miller lived there once for many a day, who dressed up like a peacock. He could play the bagpipes, wrestle, shoot his bow, and fish, mend nets, and lay the wooden cup or dish. He wore a long knife, always at his belt, keen as a sharpened sword as its edges fell. A fancy dagger, too, he kept upon him, and no man dared to put a finger on him. He kept a Sheffield blade inside his hose. He had a round face and a flattened nose. His skull had no more hair than a bald egg, and he went to market looking for a scrape. And anyone who was bold enough to lay a hand on him, he swore he'd soon repay. He was, for the fact, a thief of corn and meal, and sly at that, well versed in how to steal. And he was christened Simon, Simkin by nickname. As for his wife, from a noble kin she came. Her father was a parson of the town, and handsome was the dowry that he paid down. For Simkin, with his blood, would be allied. She was brought up in a convent. In his pride, Simkin refused to take a wife. He said, unless she were a maiden and well bred. To keep up his position as a yeoman, proud as a jay, she was sent and pert, this woman. They made a sight together, did this pair. On Saint's Day, he would march in front of her, the muffler of his hood tied round his head, while she came after in a cape of red. And Simpkin sported long hose of the same, and no one dared speak her except as dame. And none so hardy walking by the way, who dared make love, or even so much as play, unless he would be killed with Simpkin's wife, for fear Simpkin's cutlass or his knife. These jealous men are dangerous, as we know. Who's narrating this? Don't forget to read, right? At least they want their wives to think them so. And she suffered a smirch by being a priest's daughter. And so she was as snotty as a ditchwoman, hotty-totty, haughty and snobbish, and down her nose to spare. A lady ought to carry herself with care. She thought, what for the duty of maintaining her kinship and her stock of convent training. So between them, they produced a daughter, grown to 20 or so, and see how time flies when he's telling this tale, right? Between them, they produced a daughter, grown to 20 or so, and save for her alone, no other children except one, a mere babe in the cradle of some half a year. And she was plump, well-rounded wench, this lass. Her nose was flat, her blue eyes closed legs, and her buttocks broad. Her breasts were round and high, and she had lovely hair. That's no one. This parson, seeing that the girl was fair, had in his mind to name her as his heir, both of his goods and dwelling in addition. He made her marriage hard, for his ambition was to bestow her hand and property on blood that came with worthy ancestry. The things that are the holy church's must be spent on blood that holy church owns by descent. He would not leave his holy blood in a lurch, although he might devour the holy church. A heavy toll this miller took, cast doubt of wheat and barley, all the land about. He cheated the great college, worst of all, that stands in Cambridge, King's or Solar Hall, for he was given their malt and wheat to grind. In those days, the miller ground them, right? Ground them up, make bread, flour. They happened on a certain day to find their steward sick and in a stupor lying, and they thought for certain that he must be dying. And so this miller stole both meal and corn, more than he had ever since that he was born, 100-fold. He thieved it courteously before, but now he stole outrageously. The provost stormed and raised a great affair, but all this gave the miller little care. He talked big, swearing, "Not so!" on his oath. "I didn't do it." Two young students at that time were both residing in this hall of which I speak. They loved their fun, and they were full of cheek. And merrily, for a jaunt, they busily begged the provost to let them go and see their corn ground at the mill. Each bet his neck that the miller wouldn't cost them half a pence. Whether by force or sleight he tried to thieve, at last the provost granted them his leave. Provost was like the top dog in the school, right? The provost. So John was the name of one student, and Ellen was the other student. And their birthplace was the same as a town called Stuffer, far to the north. I cannot tell you where. Now, Theodore Morrison puts a footnote here. Chaucer may intend his listeners to think of an actual town. The speech of the students as the tale goes on is sprinkled with snatches of a northern dialect, in effect that would be difficult to transpose into modern English. Don't forget, this is medieval English. We're reading a translation by Theodore Morrison, and we don't want to read the original medieval English. I think I've showed you a sample in one of these, or I will, and it's not easy reading. This is difficult reading as it is, but medieval English would be very difficult. I don't want to lose you. Ellen gathered his stuff for this affair and got a horse to put the grain sack on. So off went Ellen, the student, and off went John, and each with a sword and buckler at his side. And John knew the way. He didn't need a guide. And at the mill, the grain sack down, he sat, and Ellen spoke first. "Simpkin," he said, "well met. How are your lovely daughter and your wife?" "Ellen," said Simpkin, "welcome on my life. And also John. What are you doing here?" "Simpkin," said John, "without a slave, no fear. A man slaves for himself, or he's a fool. Necessity, say the learned, knows no rule. Our steward, I expect, will soon be dead. His molars ache so steadily in his head, and that's why I'm here, and Ellen too. We've come to grind our own corn and then carry it home. Help us get it off as quickly as we may." "Just as you want it," Simpkin said. "Trust me. What will you do while this is going on?" "By God, right by the hopper," answered John. "I'll stand and see how the corn goes in. I've never watched yet by my father's kin the way the hopper jiggles to and fro." "Is that," said Ellen, "what are you going to do?" "I'll be down underneath then, while by my hide, and notice how the grain comes down on the slide." So you're going to watch as it's being grinded into the trowel. And that's what I'll do for sport. For John, the fact is that I'm of your sort. I'm as bad as a miller as you can be. In other words, they're saying that they don't know how to do this stuff. To be full of cheek, by the way, means to be rude and sassy. I put little notes for them. The miller smiled at their simplicity. The question you have to ask is it simple? And he thought, so that's it. That's their stratagem. They fancy no one can hornswoggle them to get the better of them, to cheat them. But yet, I'll let them have some dust in the end. For all the slight in their philosophy, the better the trap, no matter how sly they make it, the more I'll pull through when I'm ready to take it. We're going to steal. Instead of flour, I'll give them only bran. The greatest scholar is not the wisest man. And one time to the wolf remarked the bear, for all their cunning, a fig is what I care. So out of the doorway he slipped quietly when he perceived his time in secrecy, and up and down he looked until he found the student's horse, for it was standing bound by the mill beneath the clump of trees. Up to the horse, as easy as you please, he went, and he stripped the bridle off, and when the horse was loose, he started for the fen, where they were the wild mares running, and thundered in, whee, whining on through the thick and thin. This miller came back, and not a word he spoke, but with the students he began to joke. And he worked until the corn was all well ground. And when the meal was in the sack and bound, this John goes out and he finds no horse at all. Help! Help! And God's bones! And he began to call, our horse is gone! Come out here, Ellen, man! Step on your feet! Get going if you can! Our provost palfrey lost! Here's a fine deal! And this Ellen forgot both corn and meal. His husbandry was wholly put to rout. Husbandry, the care, cultivation, and breeding of crops and animals. His husbandry was wholly put to rout. Where's he heading? He began to shout. And then the miller's wife came leaping in on the run. Off to the fen, she said. Your horse is gone with the wild mares as fast as he can go. And no thanks to the hand that tied him so. So they're blaming the way the horse was tied up that he got loose. He should have been put in a better knot in the reins. Alas, John said, Ellen, for Christ's pains, put down your sword and I'll put mine down too. A roe can't run by God the way I do. He can't shake both of us, and he won't be able. God's hard. Why didn't you put him in the stable? God, Ellen said, you're a fool. Look at what you've done. How bent away these hapless scholars run. Straight toward the fen, probably the landscape, right? The open meadow. Ellen and with him John. And then the miller, when he saw that they were going, took of their flour half a bushel or so, and he told his wife to knead it into dough. And I think these students had their fears, he said, but a miller can beat a scholar. For all his knowledge, let them go their way. Look where they go, yes. Let the children play. They'll work before they catch him. I'll be bound. So these luckless students ran and thrashed around with, whoa, whoa, stand this way. Behind, keep clear. You go and whistle, and I'll hold them here. Cut it short until the very night they could not, though they worked with all their might, lay hands on this nag. He ran so fast until they caught him in a ditch at last. Weary and wet as a cow is in the rain. What a great line. Weary and wet as a cow is in the rain. Means they sweat their butts off. Right? Ellen, and with him John, came back again. A curse, said John, on the day that I was born. Now we'll be in for a ribbing and for scorn. Our meal is stolen, and men will call us fool. Yes, both the provost and our friends at school, and especially the miller, damn the day. With Bayward the horse in hand along the way, Bayward, that's the horse's name, huh? Back to the mill, and thus John moaned in his ear. He found the miller sitting by the fire, for it was night, and no further could they go, but they begged him for the love of God to show some comfort and some shelter for their penny. The miller answered them, well, if there is any, such as it is, you two shall have your part. My house is small, but with your scholar's art, you can by syllogisms make a place a mile wide out of 20 feet of space. You see how he's mocking them? See? By your syllogisms, make a place a mile wide out of 20 feet of space. He's mocking, he's mocking them. They can't, it's got a small house. No matter what they do, they can't make it bigger. See if there's room in this place for each of us, or as your way is, puff it up with speech. Now, by St. Colbert, always a bright word, Simon, said John. Colbert was a saint of the early Northumbrian church. He was a monk, bishop, hermit, associated with monasteries. So he takes an oath, right? Said John. Well answered, I've heard. A man must always take one of two things, such as he finds, or else such as he brings. A man must always take one of two things, such as he finds, or else such as he brings. But especially, and this I beg you most, get some meat and drink, and make cheer, good host, and we will pay you in full. You understand? A man can't lure a hawk with an empty hand. Look, here's our silver ready to be spent. His daughter off to town, the miller sent for ale and bread, and roasted them a goose, and tied their horse, no more to wander loose. And in his room he made them a bed, with sheets and shelling blankets neatly spread, not more than 10 or 12 feet from his own. His daughter, in the same room, slept alone, all by herself in another bed close by. It was best that they could be done. And why? Well, there were no roomier quarters, and that was clear, so they talked and they ate their supper with good cheer. And they pulled hard on the strong ale, as seemed best, and when midnight came, they went to rest. So they're all sleeping in the same room. You got the image in your mind? This miller was well oiled by now. What do you think that means? Huh? He's got one on, right? His head, he had drunk so much, was pale instead of red. His hiccups and his voice comes through his nose as if he had a cold, and to bed he goes. And with him goes his wife, jolly and gay, and light in the head, and frisky like a jimmy. So well her merry whistle had been wet. Under the footboard of their bed they set the crib, where the child could nurse and rock. And when they finish all that's in the crock, the daughter goes to bed. And when she is gone, to bed goes Alan, and to bed goes John. And that was all. They didn't need a drug. Why? Right? They've been drinking ale. Now, this sleeping miller had so piled the jug that he snorted like a horse, nor did he mind what might be happening to his tail behind. And his wife kept up the counter-brass in style, and she could be heard them snore for half a mile. So they're snoring like champs, right? Did you ever hear somebody snore? Did you ever hear yourself snore? We'll talk about that. The wench snored that with them, too, for company. So they're all snoring away. Ellen, who listened to this melody, woke John and said, "Are you sleeping through this, bro? Have you ever heard as much music before now? Here's a fine service to wind up the day between them all. I hope they burn away with itch. Did ever such a racket rend a poor man's ears, the best of a bad end? I'll give it to them, though. I see I'll have no rest all night long. No matter, it's for the best. For John, by the wealth of the church or bench, if I can work it, I'm going to lay that wench." The law itself some easement offers us. For John, there's a maxim that goes like this: if in one point of law a man's aggrieved, then in some other point he shall be relieved. They're quoting law maxims because he's going to rationalize why he's going to lay the daughter, right? Our corn is stolen, and that we can't gainsay. And we've been in a bad fix this whole day. Now, in my law is passed all cancellation, I will accept instead some compensation. And by the soul of God, he said, it shall be so. Ellen, John replied, think twice. You know, this Miller is a dangerous man. And if he wakes up and jumps out of bed, he may do us both an injury. I'll hold him, Ellen answered. He's a mere flea. He rose, and toward the wench began to creep. The wench lay stretched, but flat and fast asleep. He got so near that she could not bat an eye before it was too late to raise a cry. To cut the story short, they were at home. Now make hay, Ellen, and we'll turn to John. So he's telling the story. He says, okay, so there they are in bed together. John lay quiet for a moment or so. He brooded to himself, and he nursed his woe. Quote, this is a wicked prank, and no escape. I see that I'm no better than an ape. My pal here, for his troubles and his harms, has got the miller's daughter in his arms. He took a chance, and now his needs are fed, while like a sack of chaff I lie here in my bed. People will soon joke about this exploit soon, and I'll pass for a fool or a platoon. I'll rise and take my chance too, come what may. For nothing ventured, nothing had, they say. He rose, and to the cradle cautiously he went, and picked it up, and quietly put it by his bed's foot on the floor. So he's moving the cradle. And soon after this, the good wife ceased to snore, for she went out for a leak, and coming back, she missed the cradle. She felt first on one track and then another, but the cradle was not there. Mercy, she said, I've almost been undone. I almost got into the student's bed. Bless me, then I would have all been ill spent. So on she gropes. Remember, it's pitch black. She can't fill the cradle, so she thinks since there's no cradle, she was going to be in the student's bed, which is actually incorrect. She'd be in her bed, right? Because he moved the cradle to his bed. The cradle and the bed is in her mind, and she had no thought of anything but good, for there, right by the bed, the cradle stood. And since the night was dark, she couldn't see, but by the student called in trustfully. And she lay quite still, and would have gone to sleep. Presently, John the student, with a leap, pitched into this good woman. Year in, year out, she had not had for long so merry a bout. For hard and deep he went, and he thrust like mad. Oh, such was the jolly life these students had, until the cocks were tuning up their choir for the third time. Ellen began to tire as dawn came near, for he had worked all night. Molly, he whispered, it will soon be light. I can't stay any longer by your side. But, sweetheart, always I will walk or ride. I am your own forever until I die. Now, darling, go, said Molly, and goodbye. But wait, I'm going to tell you something still. On the way home, as you go past the mill, stop at the door, and there, right in behind, a good half a bushel loaf and bread you'll find, kneaded and baked from your own meal, the very same I helped my father steal. So go, God, and keep you safe, sweetheart. God keep. And she was almost in a state to weep. Ellen got up. Before it's day, I ought to crawl in with my crony here, he thought, and promptly felt the cradle with his hands. Well, I'm all turned about. I don't know where I am. Remember, it's still dark. My head is fuzzy with my work tonight. By God, I haven't got my bearings right. The cradle makes it certain that I've gone wrong. This is where the miller and his wife belong. And as the devil would have it, he groped his way in straight to the bed in which the miller lay. And in with John, and so he thought, he eased him, and he lay down by the miller instead. And he seized him around the neck, and speaking softly said, Wake up, John. Wake up, you dull swine's head. Listen, for Christ's soul, to some noble sport. For by St. James, although it has been short, flat on her back 3 times in this one night, I roared the miller's daughter, while for fright you lay here. Have you so? The miller said. You false thief, God's dignity. You shall be dead, you traitor. You dared abuse a daughter of mine, false scholar. And she comes of such a line, and he seized Ellen by the Adam's apple, and Ellen desperately began to grapple with him and let him have it on the nose and the miller's chest in a stream flowed. And on the floor, with the nose smashed and the teeth broke, they heave and they roll like two pigs in a poke. And while they get up and down again to go till a stone, the miller stubbed his toe, and he took a backward tumble on his wife, who had no notion of this frenzied strife. For she had quickly dozed off with this John, who had not slept all night for what went on. And with the fall, her eyes popped open wide and said, Holy cross of Boom! Priory, help, she cried. Into thy hands, O Lord, on thee I call. Wake, Simon! Fiends, devils, on me fall. My ribs are burst. Help, help! I'm as good as dead. Someone is on my belly and my head. Help, Simpkin, for the wicked students are fighting. So this John sprang up as quickly as he might, and here and there along the walls he fumbled to find his staff, and out she also tumbled, and knew the right nooks better than he would. And by the wall she found a stick of wood, and saw a tiny gleaming of light, where through the crack the moon was shining bright, and by the glint of light she saw the two, but could not tell for certain who was who, except for something pale that she made out. Seeing this thing of white, she had no doubt it was a nightcap that the student wore. Closer and closer with her stick she bore, thinking that to hit this Ellen a good hop, and fetch the miller one on his bald top. He went down with, so she hits her husband. He went down with a yell, Ow, I'm dying. These students beat him up and left him lying, and they quickly dressed and got their meals and horse, and set out promptly on their homeward course. And the mill they found, as Molly had said, well baked, their good half bushel of loaf of bread. And so this proud miller got himself a beating, and he lost his labor with all his cheating, and paid for every bit that they had to sup, Ellen and John, who soundly beat him up. His wife got hers, and so did his daughter too. And this comes from cheating that false millers do. True are the words that this old proverb still, quote, let him not look for good whose works are ill, unquote. For tricked himself shall every trickster be. And now may God, thorned high in majesty, bring us both, great and small, into his glory. Thus I have paid the miller with my story. Wow. Another bawdy one, huh? Thanks for reading with Jimmy. This has been the Reeve's Tale in answer to the Miller's Tale. Another bawdy. What a bawdy tale, huh? I don't know. Are you enjoying it? I certainly am. This is Chaucer's The Reeve's Tale. Be sure to visit and read other classics on this website. There's many, many, many classics. We love having you here. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com is my email address. Send me your notes, your comments, and I look forward to seeing you more. And remember, aren't you glad that we use night lights these days? Sorry. Have a good day.